Your brain is playing 6 psychological tricks on you every single time you get stuck in traffic. And the 4th one will completely change how you think about road rage forever. Most people have no idea their mind is essentially hijacking their entire personality the moment they hit gridlock, turning rational adults into emotional wrecks who think honking will magically clear a 3-mile backup. If you've ever wondered why you become a completely different person behind the wheel, or why that 20-minute delay feels like psychological torture, you're about to discover the hidden mental mechanisms that control your behavior in ways you never realized. The first psychological trick your brain plays is called the illusion of control, and it's why you genuinely believe switching lanes will save you time even when traffic is completely stopped. Your mind cannot accept that you're powerless in this situation, so it creates fake solutions to make you feel like you're doing something productive. This is the same psychological mechanism that makes people tap elevator buttons repeatedly or click refresh on slow websites. Your brain would rather have you take pointless action than accept reality, because feeling helpless triggers an ancient survival response that makes you panic. Here's what's really fascinating about this illusion of control in traffic. Studies show that drivers who change lanes frequently during heavy congestion actually arrive at their destination an average of only 2 minutes earlier than drivers who stay in one lane, but they report feeling significantly more satisfied with their commute. Your brain is literally trading actual efficiencies for the psychological comfort of feeling in control. The woman in Los Angeles who got so caught up singing Taylor Swift that she missed traffic clearing was actually experiencing a healthier psychological response than the lane switchers, because she surrendered control and found genuine enjoyment instead of manufactured productivity. Now you might be thinking that this sounds like giving up, but here's the counterintuitive truth. The most successful people in high-stress careers often practice what psychologists call strategic surrender. They recognize when they have no control and redirect their mental energy toward things they can actually influence. This is why some of the calmest drivers you'll ever meet are emergency room doctors and air traffic controllers, people who deal with life and death decisions daily. They've learned that fighting uncontrollable situations only depletes the mental resources they need for situations where control actually matters. The second psychological trick is temporal distortion, and it's why 15 minutes in traffic feels longer than 15 minutes of your favorite Netflix show. When you're enjoying something, your brain processes time differently because you're in a flow state where your attention is fully engaged. But in traffic, your mind has nothing meaningful to focus on, so it becomes hyper-aware of time passing. This creates what psychologists call the watched pot effect, where the more you focus on waiting, the slower time appears to move. But here's where it gets really interesting. That guy who spent 40 minutes rehearsing an argument with his boss was actually engaging in something called mental time travel, and his brain was trying to solve the temporal distortion problem by creating engaging content. Your mind will literally manufacture drama and conflict to give itself something interesting to process, which is why traffic jams often become breeding grounds for imaginary confrontations and elaborate fantasy scenarios. This is also why people report having their best ideas in the shower or during long drives, because when your brain isn't being entertained, it starts creating its own entertainment. The solution isn't to fight this mechanism, but to work with it strategically. Instead of letting your brain create random mental drama, successful people use traffic time for structured mental activities like planning their day, practicing presentations, or processing recent experiences. The key is giving your mind something engaging but productive to do, rather than letting it default to anxiety or manufactured conflict. Some of you are probably wondering why this matters if you're just going to be stuck anyway. And that brings us to the third psychological trick, called emotional contagion. This is why one person honking creates that traffic jam symphony where everyone starts honking together, even though they know it won't help. Your brain has mirror neurons that automatically copy the emotional states of people around you, which is why road rage spreads through traffic like a virus. That Chicago driver who started honking in rhythm to his radio accidentally discovered something profound about human psychology. Instead of spreading frustration, He created a shared positive experience that other drivers wanted to join. The news station called it gridlock groove, but psychologists would call it collaborative emotional regulation. He transformed individual stress into collective joy, which is exactly what great leaders do in crisis situations. This emotional contagion effect is also why you feel more frustrated in traffic when you're already having a bad day. Your existing emotional state amplifies and gets reflected back to you by the energy of other stressed drivers around you. But successful people use this knowledge strategically by consciously choosing to project calm energy, which actually influences the behavior of nearby drivers and creates a more pleasant experience for everyone. Now here's something most people don't know about the fourth psychological trick, and this one will change everything about how you understand road rage. It's called regression under stress, and it's why adults start acting like toddlers the moment traffic slows down. When your brain perceives a threat to your goals, it literally reverts to more primitive emotional responses. This is why rational adults suddenly believe that tailgating, aggressive gesturing, and horn honking will solve complex logistical problems. That woman who had a full emotional breakdown in her rearview mirror was experiencing what psychologists call stress-induced emotional dysregulation. Her brain was cycling through fight, flight, and freeze responses, trying to find a solution to a problem that couldn't be solved with prehistoric survival strategies. The driver behind her was filming because humans are naturally fascinated by watching others lose emotional control, which makes us feel superior and more stable by comparison. But here's what's really happening during these traffic meltdowns. Your prefrontal cortex, which handles rational decision-making, actually goes offline when stress levels get too high. This is why people do things in traffic that they would never do in normal social situations. They're not bad people, they're experiencing temporary cognitive impairment caused by psychological pressure. Understanding this changes everything because it shifts the focus from judging behavior to managing the underlying stress response. The most emotionally intelligent drivers recognize these regression warning signs in themselves and have specific strategies to reactivate their rational thinking. Some use breathing techniques, others use mental exercises, and some simply acknowledge that their brain is in survival mode and wait for it to reset. This is insider knowledge that most people never learn because we're taught to judge traffic behavior morally instead of understanding it psychologically. The fifth psychological trick is called solution aversion, and it's why every person stuck in traffic becomes a city planning expert with completely unrealistic ideas. Your brain cannot tolerate unsolvable problems, so it creates elaborate fantasy solutions that make you feel intellectually superior to the people who designed the roads. This is the same mechanism that makes people believe they could run companies better than CEOs or coach sports teams better than professionals. That Seattle traffic engineer who recorded people's suggestions, heard conveyor belt roads, underground tubes, and trampoline transportation because people's brains were desperately trying to solve an impossibly complex problem with simple solutions. The most popular suggestion was replacing all cars with trampolines, which sounds ridiculous until you understand that the brain often processes frustration by imagining magical alternatives to reality. This solution aversion serves an important psychological function by maintaining your sense of competence and intelligence during situations where you feel powerless and stupid. But successful people channel this mental energy differently. Instead of creating impossible solutions to traffic problems, they use drive time to solve actual problems in their personal and professional lives. They turn their car into a mobile brainstorming session for challenges they can actually influence. The sixth and final psychological trick is called compensatory consumption, and it explains why smart people always pack snacks for traffic, but somehow choose the messiest foods possible. When you feel deprived of the control, progress, and freedom, your brain seeks compensation through sensory pleasure and immediate gratification. This is why that Miami delivery driver ended up eating spaghetti with his bare hands while driving, creating the most chaotic car dining experience ever recorded. Your brain is essentially saying, if I can't control this traffic situation, at least I can control what goes in my mouth right now. This same mechanism explains why people make impulsive purchases after stressful days, eat comfort food during difficult periods, or binge-watch shows when they feel overwhelmed. It's psychological compensation for areas of life where you feel powerless. But here's what most people miss about compensatory consumption in traffic. The mess and chaos often make the situation worse, adding physical discomfort to psychological stress. Successful people satisfy this compensation need more strategically by keeping easy, clean, satisfying snacks available and using eating as a mindful activity that enhances rather than complicates their traffic experience. Now that you understand these 6 psychological mechanisms, you can start recognizing them in real time and making conscious choices about how to respond. The goal isn't to eliminate these mental processes because they're hardwired into human psychology. The goal is to work with your brain instead of against it, using these psychological tendencies to create better outcomes rather than more frustration. Remember that every other driver around you is experiencing these same psychological tricks, which means traffic is essentially a large-scale psychology experiment happening in real time. The people who seem calm and collected have simply learned to manage these mental mechanisms more effectively, not because they're better people, but because they understand how their minds work under pressure. The next time you're stuck in traffic, try this challenge. Pick one of these 6 psychological tricks and consciously observe it happening in your own mind without trying to fight it. Just notice when your brain starts creating illusions of control, distorting time, copying emotions from other drivers, regressing to primitive responses, generating fantasy solutions, or seeking sensory compensation. Awareness is the first step towards psychological mastery. Which of these 6 psychological tricks do you recognize most in your own traffic behavior? And what's the weirdest thing you've ever done while stuck in gridlock? Let me know in the comments because I read every single one, and your stories might become part of a future video about the psychology of driving. If this breakdown of traffic psychology was helpful, subscribe for more videos that reveal the hidden mental mechanisms controlling your daily behavior. Next week, I'm covering the 6 psychological tricks your brain plays during waiting in line. And number 3 involves the same emotional contagion effect we talked about today, but in a completely different context that will surprise you.